Mrs. Whitaker, the judge asked, can you state your name for the court? My son smiled from the defense table. Not kindly, victoriously. Graham had worn that smile for years. Every time he thought money, age, and silence had already won for him. Beside him, my grandson Preston leaned back as if the hearing were only a formality. To them, I was poor old Lillian, 82, half-deaf, silent since the stroke, too fragile to understand the accounts they had emptied or the documents they had pushed under my hand. Then I placed both hands on the witness stand and used the voice I had hidden for 4 years. My name is Lillian Grace Whitaker. The courtroom froze. Graham's smile fell. Preston froze. Their attorney dropped his pen. Behind me, my granddaughter Maya let out a sound that was half sob, half prayer. For years, my son had spoken about me as if I were already buried. He sold my furniture, moved my money, forged my name, and called me too broken to know. But I knew every word. 3 weeks earlier, Graham left me outside Maya's apartment with 2 suitcases and a note taped to my coat. It was raining in Colorado Springs, cold rain shining under the parking lot lights. Maya had just come home from a 12-hour shift at Fort Carson. She was still in her army jacket when she found me by her door. "Grandma?" Her voice cracked. I wanted to touch her face the way I had when she was small, but I kept my hands folded. Stillness had become my cover. Silence had become my shield. Maya crouched and pulled the note from my coat. "She is your problem now. Do not call us. We are done." There was no signature. Graham never signed cruelty. He preferred people to recognize it without proof. "He left you here?" Maya whispered. I let my eyes answer, because everyone believed my voice was gone. After my stroke, I did lose speech for a while. Words sat behind my teeth like birds trapped in a room, but slowly, painfully, they came back. First whispers, then sentences, then the whole truth. Graham never noticed, or maybe he never wanted to. Once he believed I could not hear and could not speak. His real face came out. He took calls in front of me, discussed wire transfers beside my wheelchair, laughed with Preston about old lady money while I sat 3 feet away with a blanket over my knees. People become honest around those they consider powerless. My late husband, Arthur, had understood that. Before he died, he hid an old photograph inside the lining of my blue suitcase. On the back, in his careful handwriting, he wrote one sentence: "Do not let Graham find the ledger." That night, Maya carried me into her 1-bedroom apartment. Her couch sagged. Bills covered the counter. A uniform dried over a chair. She had debts, duty, and no room for an unwanted grandmother. But she made room. That is how you recognize family, not by blood, but by who opens the door when everyone else leaves. For 2 days, Maya called doctors, social services, and Graham. He finally answered. "She's your mother," Maya said. "Not anymore," Graham replied, and hung up. Maya turned away so I would not see her cry, but I saw everything. I always had. That night, after Maya fell asleep, I pulled the blue suitcase close with my foot. The false bottom opened beneath a hidden stitch. Inside were the papers: bank statements, trust records, wire transfers, forged signatures, property documents I had never approved, receipts from shell companies tied to Preston, letters from Arthur's attorney, proof Graham thought an old silent woman could never understand. $3 million does not vanish all at once. It leaks. A small transfer after a hospital visit, a fee to a company with no office, a signature on a day I was supposed to be unconscious, a trust amendment witnessed by a man who had been dead for 6 months. I collected it all. At first, I collected because I was afraid, then because I was angry. Finally, because I wanted the truth to be so complete that Graham could not charm, shout, or buy his way around it. The next morning, I placed one envelope on Maya's kitchen table. She found it while making coffee. Her eyes moved from Arthur's handwriting to the bank papers, then to a photo of Graham leaving a title office with Preston. Her face changed slowly. Soldier first, granddaughter second, rage last. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you understand what this is?" I looked at her. Then, for the first time in her adult life, I spoke. "Yes." The mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "You can talk?" "When I choose to." She sank into the chair across from me. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because when I still had a voice, no one listened. Because Graham needed to believe I was helpless long enough to stop hiding his crimes. But I only said, because silence made him careless." By noon, Maya called Arthur's old lawyer, Benjamin Cole. When he saw me sitting upright at her table, his eyes filled. "Lillian," he said. "Hello, Ben." Then we worked. For 10 days. Maya barely slept while Benjamin covered her kitchen table with dates, signatures, transfers, deeds, medical records, and Arthur's old letters. Graham came once while Maya was on base. He stood in the doorway wearing a coat worth more than her rent. "Mother," he said, crouching in front of me, "I need you to sign something." He placed a pen in my hand and squeezed too hard. "It will make things easier. You don't want to be a burden to Maya, do you?" Behind him, Preston looked around the apartment and muttered, "She really lives like this?" Graham ignored him. "Just make a mark." "Mother." I let the pen fall. For 1 second, the mask slipped. My son looked at me with pure disgust. "Fine," he whispered. "Rot here, then." He left with the paper unsigned. What he did not know was that Maya had come home early and was recording behind the bedroom door. That recording became Exhibit 14. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and old fear. Graham arrived with Preston beside him, both carrying the confidence of men who had never been punished properly. They believed the hearing was about control. They did not know the lawsuit was in my name, that Benjamin had asked to freeze the accounts, or that I intended to speak. Their attorney called me tragically impaired and described Maya as emotional and financially unsuitable. Then Benjamin stood. "Your Honor, my client would like to testify." Graham actually chuckled. That was his mistake. The bailiff helped me to the witness stand. The room blurred, not from age, but from memory. Arthur's hand in mine, Graham laughing, Maya asleep with bank records on her sleeve. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitaker, can you state your name for the court?" And I rose. Not from the chair. From every year they had buried me alive. "My name is Lillian Grace Whitaker." Graham stood so fast his chair hit the rail. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "She's confused." I looked at him calmly. "No, Graham. I was confused when I believed loving you meant protecting you from consequences." The judge struck the gavel. "Mr. Whitaker, sit down." I told the court everything. How Arthur noticed the first missing funds before his death. How he built safeguards into the trust. How Graham moved money through Preston's companies. How he came to my room after the stroke and said, At least now she can't argue. How I chose not to argue because evidence lasts longer than anger. Benjamin entered the ledger. Then the bank statements. Then the forged signatures. Then Maya's recording. Graham's own voice filled the courtroom. Just make a mark, Mother. Maya began to cry silently behind me. By the end of the hearing, Graham no longer looked rich. He looked small, because the story he told himself had collapsed in front of strangers. The judge froze the disputed accounts and properties, referred Preston's companies for fraud investigation, and appointed an independent examiner. Then she said I was competent to make my own decisions. Competent. After years of being spoken around, spoken over, and spoken about, that one word felt like sunlight on my face. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to stop me. I let Maya answer one question. "What do you want people to know?" someone asked. Maya looked at me, then back at the cameras. That silence is not the same as weakness. 3 months later, I moved into a little yellow house with a garden 2 streets from Maya's apartment. The house is not grand. The steps creak, and the kitchen window faces east. Maya visits after duty when she can. Sometimes she brings groceries. Sometimes she simply sits with me while we drink tea. Graham's assets remain frozen. Preston's business is under investigation. I do not celebrate that. A mother does not enjoy watching her child fall, even when he built the staircase himself. But I sleep better now. Not because revenge made me happy. Because truth made me free. Last week, Maya found me planting lavender. "Grandma," she asked, "do you wish you had spoken sooner?" I looked at the flowers pushing through dark soil. "No," I said. "I spoke when the truth was ready." That evening, we sat on the porch while the Colorado sky turned purple. For the first time in years, no one called me a burden or needed me powerless to feel strong. I had my voice. I had my name. And finally, I had a home. If this story stays with you, remember the quiet people in your own family, the old ones, the overlooked ones, the ones sitting in corners while others decide what their lives are worth. Sometimes they are not lost. Sometimes they are listening. And sometimes, when the room is ready, they speak the truth.